Well, hello. Uh, Let me introduce Maggie to you now that I've been introduced. I first met Maggie as long ago as 1974, when I like to say we were both 6 months old, but actually we were a little bit older than that. And we were both working at the time in what's now become the Ministry of Justice. Maggie went on to become a senior civil servant and part of a very successful job share. Part of her work included interviewing prospective recorders who were part-time judges in the Crown Court. And then she became CEO of the, always get this slightly wrong, Judicial Training Organization. She retired a little bit early due to ill health, but since retiring, she's recovered her health and discovered the joys of dance. And she has, of course, written the book, which she's going to tell you all about this evening. Maggie's creed is, we're living longer, let's live better. Hello, Maggie.
Hello, Nigel, and thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here and looking forward to hearing everybody's comments and views on what we discuss this evening.
Well, first of all, can you just tell a little bit more about yourself than I was able to outline then?
Yes, well, you've done a very full job, but just one or two things. I consider myself a yold. This is an expression that I heard only very recently, which means a young old, anybody between 65 and 75. I just turned 69 last week, so I consider I'm one of the yolds. I've been married for over 40 years. I have 2 adult children. We live in West London. And as you say, I retired early from a job that I absolutely loved because I was ill for several months and was very upset and depressed and not well for quite a long time afterwards, missing something that I loved, my colleagues, my identity, my purpose. And the money. But gradually, after quite a while, I got better, physically better, and then I returned to something I had just discovered in my late 50s, which has been mentioned, that was dancing. And I took up Latin dance and then Argentine tango, and then more recently I moved on to ballet, and I'm thrilled to be a member of a dance company called Sage, and I see at least one member loyally here, which is for older people over 55, a ballet-based company, which is wonderful. And dancing in so many ways has transformed my life. But I also discovered a charity called Open Age, which has lots and lots of classes, and I took lots of classes, and I was so bowled over by this wonderful charity that I volunteered, and I'm now trustee and vice chair. So that's probably enough.
Well, then tell us how you became a speaker and an author on aging better.
Yes, well, it was a slow thing because obviously I retired when I was 59, but by my mid-60s, I suppose, I discovered that really my health had returned and I was feeling actually happier than I'd ever been before. And I love my job and love bringing up my kids. And I realized that I wasn't the only one who was happier in their mid-60s. All the members of Open Age, my friends, all these other yolds, they were also living fun, full, packed lives. And I thought, well, this is really interesting. And it sort of sparked an interest in aging well, and what makes for successful aging, and the members of Open Age who seem to have cracked it. But then I also discovered at the same time a huge amount of ageism out there, negativity around getting older, this narrative of decrepitude and people bent over their walking sticks and ageist greeting cards. And I thought, this really didn't coincide with the reality that I knew and could see around me. So I thought that I really needed to fill the gap. And so, having become addicted to Twitter, I started a Twitter account called Age Joyfully at Aging Better. to portray a more realistic but positive view of aging. And amazingly, there must have been a gap in the market because it's really taken off. And I now have over 7,500 followers. And clearly there was a need. But then I discovered that actually an awful lot of older people hate social media and hate Twitter and aren't on it. And several people suggested to me, why didn't I write a book? And then I thought, well, perhaps I should. So that led to a long gestation of How to Age Joyfully, which amazingly got published in 2019. And really the focus of the book is aimed at midlife and beyond, but it really applies to every age, and it's all about really living your best life. It could have been called How to Live Joyfully rather than How to Age Joyfully. So that gives us a clue perhaps as to how you got to your title and also the subject of this event. Yes, because it really sprung from the pandemic, because I'm not alone, I think, in saying that we've all been hugely affected in one way or another by the coronavirus. And I realized that actually it's impacted on our mental and physical health to a greater or lesser degree, although some people have loved it. And several people said to me that the book had actually been a help to them during the pandemic, the messages in the book. And I suddenly realized that actually, yes, the steps in the book perhaps really could help people through it and have a more positive experience, or at least perhaps a less negative experience. So I thought, right, this is what I'll call the talk. Live well, age better. Well, can you perhaps tell us a little bit more about what you found through your research and your own experience? Yes. Well, the key message, as I think was mentioned at the beginning, is that we are living longer. That's a fact, and we ought to be celebrating it. And that's great, but not if we're going to live our added years in poor health with chronic conditions. It shouldn't be a burden. It should be increased health span, should be something that's great. Unfortunately, there really are serious health inequalities that exist due to poverty or genes or lack of education, which are really quite largely out of people's control. But the message in the book is, and this is what I found from the research and evidence that I read, was that there is in fact a huge amount that we can do ourselves, whoever we are, to make a significant and a positive difference to our lives through our actions, our behaviours, and our attitudes. That there isn't really a silver bullet to living well or aging better, but I distilled it down from reading into sort of these 8 steps that really I thought together enabled one to lead a happier, healthier, and hopefully a longer life. Now your book, which has a foreword by Dame Judi Dench, no less, came out about a year ago, is that right? A year, almost a year to the day, Nigel, 11th of July, I can't believe it. And it's been a real success. It's been endorsed by health and aging experts, and it's been in Amazon's bestsellers aging list. Received media attention, including featuring on Radio 4's Woman's Hour, and won an award, and recently been published in the USA and Canada. Was that a surprise? You must be really thrilled about that. Well, I can't believe it, honestly. I still can't believe it a year on. I was amazed in my first book at 68, and getting a book deal was just I mean, it was just incredible. I never dreamt it would be published. And then when it was published, I thought, well, I'll sell about 100 copies to my loyal friends who I'll persuade to buy a copy of the book. So the fact that it's really quite taken off and it's consistently up there in the bestsellers on aging has been a complete joy to me. And the feedback I've got it's just lovely that people say they find it helps and they find, well done. Yeah. They find that it's inspired them or motivated them, and people say they really like the practical tips, about 150 of them, and even more they like what I didn't write, which is the inspirational quotes, which I do think are absolutely wonderful. I'll try and give you a few as I go through, if I can remember them. And I'm really delighted, and I'm particularly delighted because I'm donating 50% of my royalties to that charity I mentioned earlier, Open Age. So if it does sell well, hopefully Open Age will get a bit of money out of it, which would be absolutely wonderful.
And it's got a really joyful look about it too, actually. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to hold this up. Look, it's back to front, but it's yellow and blue, and it looks encouraging.
Yeah, it is. I think Summersdale, my publishers, did an absolutely ace job on the design, the colours for each step and the quotes, and it's very accessible and uplifting, the way they've presented it. I think I couldn't be happier with what they've done, I must say. I'm really thankful to them.
So let's have a look at the 8 steps which you mentioned. What's the first?
Well, the first is, I'm sure most people would be able to guess what the first is, and I think it's probably the most important, and it's what I call move, but really physical activity, which I think is absolutely key. Unfortunately, we are actually moving less than we used to. We've become far more sedentary, and the NHS has called physical activity the miracle cure. And it's really sad that so many people are not actually taking enough exercise. I mean, the World Health Organization in 2018 said 1 in 4 people globally are inactive, which is really quite a high figure. And I think during lockdown, a lot of people have actually moved less rather than more because of the restrictions on our lives. But the good news is that actually we can reduce our risk of dying early by up to 30% by taking exercise, and it helps reduce the risk of getting really many serious illnesses, heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's, and many, many cancers. So really, as the book describes, you need to have various forms of exercise. I'm sure everybody knows that. Aerobic exercise for heart health, muscle strengthening exercise, which is actually very important as you get older, and then something to improve flexibility, suppleness, and balance. Muir Gray, the health guru, public health guru, said that fitness can make the difference between dependence and independence in later life, and I think that's really true. So if I just give you, I'll try and do about 2 or 3 top tips, or my favorite tips for each. And my 3 tips for move would be just try any activity. Anything is better than nothing. Even a 10-minute brisk walk is good. If you can do 30 minutes in 10-minute bits, even better. But it really, really does help. There was a study that showed that those over 60 who walk for 15 minutes a day reduce their risk of dying by 22%. And it's incredible. So my second tip would be to, even if you're doing the recommended amount of exercise, avoid sitting for long periods. You should get up and move every 20 to 30 minutes if you can. You should all be getting up and moving halfway through this talk.
Coming back. But coming back.
Yes, coming back, and not with a biscuit, not with a biscuit. We'll get to that. Because it really is bad news. And apparently during lockdown, we're now spending an average of 4 hours a day on our screens. I think I'm spending double that, but still. And then my third tip would be to pick an activity that you enjoy, something that really speaks to you. Otherwise you won't make it a habit, you won't make it into your daily life, and that's bad news if it's swimming or a team sport at the moment. Luckily for me it's dancing, which I can do to a certain extent online. So that's probably enough on move.
So step 2 you call eat right.
Yes, eat right, healthy, having a healthy balanced diet, then which means eating the right foods in the right quantities. Sadly, as well as getting more sedentary, we're also globally getting fatter, and obesity is costing society billions every year in obesity-related diseases. And we've seen this actually during COVID, that if you're overweight or you suffer from type 2 diabetes, the severity of the illness is far worse. But even before the coronavirus, being obese reduced your life expectancy by between 3 and 10 years. So it is a really serious global problem. So we need to eat a balanced, varied diet. I'm sure everybody knows, you know, lots of fruit and vegetables, restricting alcohol and fats and sugar and salt. There's a lovely quote in the book that life expectancy would grow by leaps and bounds if vegetables smelled as good as bacon, and I think that's very true. But people know what to do, but it's hard to do it. And I have therefore 37 tips in the book on how to eat more healthily or to lose weight if you need to. But as Margaret Mead, the anthropologist, said, it's harder to change a man's, it's easier to change a man's religion than to change his diet. So it is difficult. So my 3 tips quickly on that would be, obviously follow the guidelines if you can, but reduce your portions, because we are eating more, portions getting bigger. One tip I've found which actually works is use a smaller plate, put your main course on a dessert plate, and it looks more and you don't have so much on the plate if you want to reduce the amount. The second is basically be mindful about eating. A lot of people eat whilst they're watching TV or on their phone or reading, and you don't notice what you're eating. You tend to eat more, so actually focus on the food and what you're eating. And the third one is basically to stop whilst you still feel you could eat some more, because it takes 20 minutes before your brain actually registers that you're full. So if you eat rapidly and you keep eating, and if you feel full at the end of the meal, you've probably overeaten.
So let's come on to step 3, which is purpose.
Purpose. Yes, this is absolutely crucial in life. It's one of the 4 that the Centre for Aging Better has said is a prerequisite for a good later life. So all about having a reason for being, an ikigai as the Japanese call it, something that gets you up in the morning, that keeps you going. What your purpose is can be infinitely variable. It could be your job, and that's why it's hard actually if people are made unemployed or they retire and they don't wish to, as I found myself. But it can be anything. It can be being grandparent, having a hobby, having another interest. It doesn't have to be your work. And my tips on that would be to have some goals. What our goals probably change throughout life, but it's important to have some. So you need to work out what you really want out of life. Take some time over that, perhaps speak to people, go to a coach if you find that useful, read biographies. And then when you've worked out what you want, write it down and make them SMART. Listeners probably know the acronym SMART, which is making things specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound, so that you can actually stick to them. Otherwise, it's very hard. Einstein said, if you want a happy life, tie it to a goal. The second tip would be do stick to working if you enjoy it and you can, because a lot of people do get their purpose, as I've said, out of working. If you can, work flexibly, and that's all the rage at the moment, or work from home. Perhaps we'll be able to do that a bit more. But if we're going to all live till 100 and get our pensions later and later, we're going to need to work for longer. So, and if you don't want to go on working, then volunteer and give your skills for free, or become an entrepreneur. Apparently, older people are very successful at becoming entrepreneurs, or go in a new direction, like Now Teach, if you've heard of that, where you can turn to teaching in later life. And then my third tip would be to find your passion, develop your passion. Most people know what they really love. If you don't, try lots of things. Certainly for me, over the last 10 years, it's been volunteering, I suppose, the book, and aging, and of course dancing.
Well, coming on to your fourth step, in a way that's been particularly highlighted, hasn't it, since lockdown?
Yeah, yes, that again is one of the really, really, I think, important ones, and so does research back up for our health and well-being, and it's to connect, because human connection is really at the heart of our health and our well-being. Again, and Aristotle said, man is by nature a social animal, and we depend on being connected to others. And I think, as you say, Nigel, that's been shown in recently, because we really have missed, I think probably more than anything else, we've missed that face-to-face connection and hugs and physical touch. And it's been shown by research that having these strong relationships is really important, and not having them apparently is as bad for your health as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness can actually kill you. So it can be hard to maintain or make connections, especially perhaps as you get older. But it is important to do so. And even now, it's possible to do it. And my 3 tips, I think, for connecting would be: join a group activity. Sadly now most of them are online, but there are so many things that you can do now online, physical or social or intellectual. And I love a quote that I've got in the book, which I think is great, that Maya Angelou says. She says, a friend may be waiting behind a stranger's face. So you can meet somebody at one of these online sessions and start chatting about similar interests, and you never know what might come out of it. So I think group activity is really good. Then volunteering, which I've already mentioned, getting you out the house, that giving you that all-important purpose, but also connecting with others who feel strongly about something that you feel strongly about. And then the third tip for this, I think, would be to just reach out and be proactive, and just contact somebody, perhaps somebody you haven't seen for a while, just telephone or WhatsApp or Skype or FaceTime, Zoom. There's so many ways. And if you don't want to actually speak to them, you can write. That's less sort of intrusive, by emails or texts, or so on social media, or even that time-honored way of putting pen to paper and writing a letter. But because people love getting letters, and I really think that's a dying art now, and it's such a shame we won't have those bundle of letters anymore. All those emails will just disappear. But connect with others and make the leap.
Now, step 5, lifelong learning, that's certainly something I try and do, except I should say perhaps with Maggie, I will have to admit, rather more reluctantly when it comes to learning technical stuff, or maybe it just doesn't go in so quickly, but I do try.
Yes, step 5 is what I call grow, but it is, as you say, lifelong learning. And yeah, it's hard, and I find things take longer to sink in, particularly dance steps. But it's all about being interested in life, curious, taking in new experiences, learning from others of all ages, because use it or lose it, that expression really applies to your brain just as much as it does to your body. And we do need to keep making those neural connections, as well as our social connections I just mentioned, to maintain our cognitive performance and reduce the risk of dementia. And I think lockdown actually has given an opportunity to many people to actually learn something new or do something new. I've taken up clay modeling, which I absolutely love because I've had a bit more time, although I appreciate some people with homeschooling and working from home and or caring for other people have not a spare hour to devote to learning something new. But here my top tips for lifelong learning would, I think the first one would be to do something creative, because there's been established a strong link between continued creativity and aging well. Two things that apparently are extremely good for the brain, which I'm sure most people know, is learning a new language or learning a musical instrument. And then my favorite, I had to come back to this, dancing. That is the best activity, because studies have shown that if you do dancing regularly, and it's a sort of dance where you're learning new choreography, new steps, you can reduce your risk of getting dementia by 76%. So I'm dancing till I drop, I tell you. So that's tip one, be creative. Tip two, I think, is to use the internet, because there's so much out there. You can even learn how to use the internet, and the webinars, tutorials, talks like this one, or from City Lit or U3A or Open Age, or then there are specialist sites. If you're interested in crafts, there's something called Blueprint or LinkedIn Learning for business. And then if you really want to get into it in a heavy way, there are, some people might know, there are MOOCs, which are massive open online courses, which are run by universities and organizations from across the world. And most of these courses are free, amazingly. I didn't realize that till I was researching for the book. So there's loads of stuff out there to keep the little grey cells going. And then my third tip on learning is a bit tangential, but it's important. It's important for so many things, and that's to get a good night's sleep, because you need that for your brain cells to work properly. We need sleep for between 7 and 9 hours, if you can. Otherwise, it affects your memory and your productivity and all sorts of things. And in the book, I've got 13 tips on sleep, which might help. So learning is very important. Henry Ford said, anyone who stops learning is old, whether 20 or 80. Anyone who keeps learning stays young.
Well, thank you, Maggie, particularly for explaining why it is that my memory's so dodgy. Because the next step, 6, is be grateful.
Yeah, be grateful. Yes, I was hesitant whether I should include this, because I think that's really hard at the moment for a lot of people when they're being deprived of so many things in this time now, and particularly for some who've actually lost friends or family. And it can be hard. But on the other hand, there is lots to be grateful for. I can't tell you how grateful. I was saying just before we started, never been so grateful to have a hair appointment as I was last Saturday. I never thought I would feel so wonderful about going to a hairdresser. But more seriously, people who have been really very seriously ill, they find that when they come through it, they are much more appreciative of the really important things in life, like relationships and family and friends and just feeling well. And they become really grateful for life, and they find actually greater happiness. Again, and a lovely quote in the book from Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, was, "When you arise in the morning, think what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, and to love." And that's right, we really need to appreciate what we have. And the good news is that we can learn to do so. Gratitude can be learnt. So again, 3 quick tips there. Count your blessings. I know it's an old hat, but it's true. Value what you have, not what you haven't. Cherish what you can do and forget about things that you can't. Secondly, just appreciate the small, simple pleasures in life. And I think that has been really true during the pandemic, that people have really appreciated the little things like birdsong or fewer planes, or for me, getting a supermarket delivery. I mean, boy, do I appreciate that. So simple pleasures are important. And then if you need to boost your giving, appreciating things, try writing a gratitude journal, which is just 3 to 5 things a day that you can jot down that you're thankful for. And you will find it really works. After a few weeks, keeping a gratitude journal can really increase positive emotions and bring benefits.
Step 7.
Step 7, give. And that has been so evident, hasn't it, during this pandemic? I mean, we've just seen amazing examples of that, from Colonel Sir Tom Moore and everybody helping the NHS to, on a personal level, I've been overwhelmed by how good friends and even strangers have been in fetching our medication and our essential shopping. It's been incredible. And the wonderful thing is that actually givers benefit as much as receivers. It's been shown again that it's good for your health. It makes you feel more thankful, more connected, more fulfilled. So people who give receive as much as those who are on the receiving end. And 3 tips for that: give to others. Obviously, it can be a tiny, just like a phone call or a text or a call, or doing some shopping during, and it's really appreciated. When I was sick, just somebody calling me up or writing me a letter was so appreciated. But give to yourself as well, which is particularly important, I think, during this time. We have to self-care and look after ourselves in times which are hard like this and anxious. Think of the analogy with planes and oxygen masks on yourself before you put one on your child. So factor in some me time, what you enjoy doing, some rest and relaxation. And then the 3rd one is something that I have signally failed to do year in, year out, which is to declutter and give things you don't need to charity shops. And I swore I would do that top girl at the beginning of lockdown, and I have still failed to achieve it. But I'm sure others have done it, and the charity shops will be deluged, but sadly I have failed.
Yeah, well, I moved into my house 34 years ago, and there's a huge, great trunk I've never opened. It's at the back of a cupboard. I don't even know what's in it.
Yeah, I know. Don't get me started on what's in our cupboards. We've been here for 40 years. It's awful.
You know, the final step is...
The final step, yes. And it may be last, but it's definitely not least. That's being positive. I think that's just one of my top 4. Again, hugely important for health and well-being. People who have a positive attitude to aging and life apparently live on average an extra 7.5 years. And the good news about that is you can learn to be more positive. Only 25% of low optimism is inherited. The rest is down to us. And I have 22 tips for that. And I see we're running out of time, so very quickly. Tip 1, focus on what you can control and what you can change. Forget the rest, move on, don't ruminate. Secondly, associate with people who lift your spirits, who are positive, don't drag you down, and do things that make you feel happy, like singing, listening to music. And thirdly, do try meditation. It really can help, and there are apps that can help you, like Headspace, Calm, and other things. And you can start with just doing as little as 3 minutes a day, so I would highly recommend that.
Well, there's quite a lot to take in, Maggie. So what would you say to someone starting on this road?
Yeah, I know. It is a lot. And what I would say, as I say in the book, is don't try and do it all or you'll fail. Just start, make a start. As Gandhi says, the future depends on what you do today. Don't put it off till after COVID or you've lost weight or whatever. Just pick one little thing, a baby step, and try that. And when you succeed, build on it and do another one. Don't try and do too much. But be kind to yourself too, especially during now, because it's hard to expect too much from ourselves. We have to care for ourselves at this time. So celebrate if you succeed, but don't beat yourself up if you don't. But persevere too. Just pick one thing, the thing you may think you benefit from the most out of the 8 or that appeals to you, and try that. And I'll end with Mae West, which is just about my favorite quote in the book. You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. And so if you do it right, you'll live well, you'll age better, and you'll stay joyful. So thank you.
Well, thanks, Maggie. But just before we open up for discussion, where can we find your Twitter account and get your book?
Oh, right. Well, yes.
But for everyone.
Yes. Well, it's available online from all online booksellers, and of course Amazon, where it's discounted, and happily now bookshops are open, so you can find it in many bookshops, but abroad or in the UK, as I say, online. And my Twitter account, well, my aging Twitter account is Age Joyfully @Aging Better, or one word. Please do follow me and say you've joined. It would be wonderful. But I also have another account, which is Maggy Pigott, @Maggy Pigott, but that's mainly about personal dance, charities, flexible working, job sharing, other such things which may not appeal so much. But yes, so and your podcasts, of course, so which are wonderful. So yes, thank you very much, and I really look forward to hearing if there are any questions from anybody. And thank you, Nigel, and thank you, Bell House, for giving me the opportunity.
A pleasure. So thank you so much for that.